discover their what or their why, how they can change the world. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's all focused on the what, right? Because to me, your what is it's everything that's internal. It's really what's in your DNA. It's what's in your blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
and your why is really everything that's external. It's kind of why you do what you do. Sort of the impetus for your efforts. Anyways, the what is what I focus on, and there are others who focus on the why.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do people discover their what, their purpose or their reason?
Yeah, so it's a process that I've worked on now with thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and it's developed over time. It started out really being just about one's core gift and helping people create or just gain a really solid understanding of what that core gift is.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I realized that that's just not enough. There's more to the equation than just the gift, because once you understand what your gift is, like your core gift might be communication, or it might be writing, or it might be entertaining, or something of that nature, training. I don't obviously know you well enough to know what
Mm-hmm.
your core gift is, but once you know what that gift is, the question is then what do you do with that gift, and
Yeah.
then who do you share that gift with? And so the three parts of the what is your what equation um, end up looking like this, which I'll show you
Uh-huh.
here. So it's really the combination of the gift, the vehicle you use to share your gift with the world, and then the people that you're most compelled to serve. And that gives people the tools they need to be able to answer that core question of what is your what.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And you also say in your book, What is Your What? That everybody can have an ability and gift to change the world. But people really doubt themselves and they think they are not able even to help themselves. How do they go about that and help their community?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? The more we help others, the more we help ourselves. Jim Rohn once said that if you can have anything in life that you want if you help others get what they want. Basically, I'm sort of paraphrasing there, but the truth is that this whole selfie generation thing is kind of hurting us, I think, to some extent, because we're so focused on self
Mm-hmm.
that we don't do what was really intended for us to do, which is to be with and communicate with and serve others.
Mm-hmm.
And so, changing the world is, that's a pretty um, a grand expectation, right? To change the world, but realistically, you don't have to change the world by yourself. The way that I look at it is, if I can help 100 people discover what their what is, and then they go out and they share that gift with those that they're most compelled to serve,
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes like the domino effect. Those people are going to impact those who are waiting for them, and those who are waiting for them, etc. So, it's kind of like that small pebble that you drop in the middle of a large body of water. Even that little pebble creates ripples that eventually reach the shore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what it's all about, is just getting things done one person at a time, because really you can only reach one person at a time when you come right down to it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And you also mentioned that you helped to go from unconscious competence to conscious. What is that process
Yeah,
about?
so it's an interesting framework that I can't take credit for. All I did was really adapt what Dr. Thomas Gordon created in his conscious competence learning stages model. There's basically four stages of the model. What you reference is stage one, which is unconscious incompetence, which is basically you just don't know what's going on. So things happen and you just don't really know why. Now, what ends up happening is you gain awareness. So once you gain awareness that you have a deficiency in a particular area of life, like I don't know how to speak Spanish, then you shift into what's known as conscious incompetence, where at least you're aware of that deficiency. And then you get a choice, and the choice is, what do, right? I mean, do you improve upon that situation? Do you modify that situation? Do you ignore that situation? Or do you excel, in that situation, right? So, I mean, it's a conscious choice, though, at that juncture, in terms of deciding what to do with that information. And
Mm-hmm.
that then leads you towards what most might call practice, right? And so once you practice that skill, once you start speaking Spanish to other people, just using this obviously as an example, you then move into what's known as conscious competence, which is now you can speak Spanish with these folks, but reality is that you still have to think about what you're saying, right? It's like, for you, probably, when you learned English, right, for the first time, you would look at a paragraph and you could kind of decipher what that whole paragraph meant generally.
Yeah.
But it was like you had to think about every word, you had to think about every sentence, you had to think about every paragraph, you had to think about every page to then come up with really what does this mean.
I don't
And
know what you're
so,
talking about. English is my native language.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I should have guessed. My fault. But so the point is you can do it, but it
Uh-huh.
takes effort, right? And so the final stage is what's known as unconscious competence. And in that final stage, things just really flow and there's no conscious thought, there's no conscious effort. I mean, some people call it being in the zone, some people call it, a state of flow. um, really for me, it's just about magic. I mean, you appear magical to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and frankly, most of us will go through a lifetime without attaining unconscious competence in any area of our life. So, I mean, even if we just get to that stage in one area of our lives, I mean, other than walking and breathing and living, it is. I mean, it is destined to have a dramatic impact both on you and your life, and of course, the lives of others.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So, who were your role models? Who influenced your career?
Yeah, I got to tell you, my grandfather really was my first role model, even more so than my dad, and certainly the first real mentor that I had. And he was an entrepreneur pretty much through his whole life. And so we spent a lot of time together. I actually had the privilege of working with him full time for about 4 years before he passed. And really, I think that as I look back on the people that I've studied with and learned from, it still goes back to my grandfather as
Mm-hmm.
being the primary role model and the primary mentor.
Wonderful. Every morning when you wake up, what drives you? What motivates you to take on a day?
Yeah, I'm just the wrong person to ask about that because I am just not a morning person. And I know you can do all these things and meditate and visualize and, all this fun stuff you can do when you get out of bed. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's a slow grind until I get up to speed. It's just like that first, you probably have used a treadmill, right? You know how when you first start the treadmill,
Yeah.
how the belt just kind of goes, and then it begins to pick up speed. Well, that's me. I mean, that's me, like in a nutshell. That is the exact personification of how I would describe my morning process. So, reality is that what drives me, honestly, is not what others would call the why. I mean, I don't. I have things that I do because of outside influences, but the primary driver is really an internal battle, if you will, that I fight every day
Mm-hmm.
to get fired up, to do what I've got to do. And so I create, sort of these unrealistic programs and events and book challenges and all of these things sort of for myself, and use those as the motive for going to work. I know that sounds a little bit odd because a lot of people are influenced by the outside world and whatnot. For me, I mean, it's always an internal game. I can, even if I see somebody laughing their butts off and they're having a great time, if I'm not in the right frame of mind, they're not necessarily going to sway me from whatever I'm feeling into how they are. And so I
Yeah.
know there are people who are more malleable, right? Malleable. They can go into a situation and then they really sort of take on that situation, the way that people are.
Mm-hmm.
That's never been me. It's just not how I'm wired to excel. So from that standpoint, in the morning, it's really a function of just getting up to speed. That to me is a victory. If I can just get up to speed, then I'm victorious. So that's kind of how I look at it. Is just is today going to be a complete waste? Or is there going to be something productive I'm going to get out of the day? There's only two choices, and for me, those are the two choices. The day's either going to be a complete waste, or I'm going to do something productive. There's almost never any in between.
Wow, interesting. So, what is your ultimate vision? What is your purpose?
I'm just not that grandiose. There are people out there who want to, impact the lives of millions and want to have $1 billion in the bank or start a company that gets bought out for $400 trillion or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think it really just kind of boils down to what it is that you want versus what it is that you actually need. And so for me, I've really become clear that what I want is very different from what I actually need. And what I need is pretty minimal when you come right down to it. And so, because of that, my vision for the future, what I want to accomplish, how I want to be remembered,
Mm-hmm.
um, truly is just as someone who lived as his authentic self and someone who wasn't afraid to express his opinion, wasn't afraid to uplift people and help, put the air under the wings when people needed to soar. But also wasn't afraid to call people on their bullshit, and just say that, this is not accurate. This is not true. This is not what you're feeling. This is not, where you want to be. This is not where you need to be. I mean, these sort of things. And so just having people know where they stand with me is more of a sort of this plans for achieving what others might, deem as being grandiose. I mean, that to me that's a huge accomplishment. Just being able to live in a manner where people know where they stand with you and they feel like they have an authentic relationship with you.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's wonderful. So, what was your worst entrepreneurial experience when you just started? Did you have something
Oh yeah.
terrible to tell us?
Oh yeah. No, there's been no shortage of failures, and a friend of mine, Jesse Elder, he talks about just failing fast, right? I mean, just we're all going to experience hundreds of failures in our lives. The question is, how quickly can we get through those failures so that we can move beyond and get to something that's more fulfilling and gives us a better sense of contribution, et cetera. So from a business perspective, yeah, there's been no shortage of failures. Although I don't, view failure in the same way other people do. I see failure as success with an unintended ending, right? So it just doesn't mean that you're a failure. I mean, that's really just one of those terms of ignorance that weak-minded people like to throw out at those who dare to soar in an attempt to bring them down. So it's always just a matter of learning. And I'll give you a couple of examples, right? So when I was 19, I opened up my own nightclub. Now, that obviously was hard to do because it couldn't be an alcoholic club, but it was a non-alcoholic club that I ended up opening up at 19. And we catered to the teenagers early, and then we closed down and cleaned up, and we catered to the adults later on, and we stayed open as late as we wanted because we didn't serve booze. And it was a great venture. It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, like any business run by a 19, 20-year-old, we hit our bumps in the road, and I had a falling out with my manager. I had a falling out with my business partner. And I walked away from that. I mean, literally with nothing, to show for it. Good experience, financially rewarding, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
The second big implosion, if you will, took place in the year 2000. I had bought the liquor.com domain in 1998. And so we were running this catalog company that provided worldwide gift delivery of wine, champagne, spirits, and gift baskets. And my mom and I actually were partners on that project. And so from 91 to 93 was basically catalog. 93 we launched online with CompuServe's electronic mall. 95 a fully functional site. 98 we picked up the liquor.com domain and became liquor.com. And in mid 99, I mean, people were just getting millions of dollars for ideas on a napkin. I mean, it was kind of that big .com hype, that bubble period. And we were like, look, we're doing millions of dollars in sales. We got a great domain. Let's just get some money in the bank here so we can begin marketing and letting more and more people know about us. And so basically, blinded by the .com light, we brought in investment bankers to help take us public. And they said, hey, you've got to hire, people with gray hairs, a CEO, a CFO, a CTO, all these people that Wall Street wanted to see. And, we signed away all of our management rights to the company because we wanted to go public. Just there was that glamour involved in taking a company public and wanted to make that happen. And we had the S1 filed in March of 2000. And sure as shit, that was the beginning of the downfall, right? So we didn't get out. The company did not go public. It became very clear that those guys had no clue what they were doing. And I literally walked away from everything, including the domain, after 9 years of work and had nothing to show for it. So that was brutal. And then, most recently, I got caught up in the real estate crash, just like a lot of other people. I had been doing after the .com work, I got into real estate development and ended up developing about $50-odd million worth of property. But then as things began to implode, I didn't let go fast enough. And a couple buildings went back to the bank, a couple were in foreclosure. And, and this whole thing, it was just kind of like the grease on the boots that's starting at the top of the mountain. I mean, it was a downhill slide and, I couldn't do anything to stop it. So, I've started pretty darn successful companies. And reality is that I've done pretty well along the way, but the exit that I had in mind, really didn't come to fruition as I envisioned for those companies. Yeah. Now, I actually still own liquor.com. It's kind of a long story, but the exit on this version of liquor.com will happen, and it should go. It will more than make up for the lack of exits on the other pieces, the other companies.
Absolutely. Wonderful story. So, Steve, you already told us you are not a morning person, but do you have any rituals that you do every day to feed your body and mind to stay healthy and inspired?
Yeah, my therapy comes in the form of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I've been practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a martial art where basically grown men and younger people too now, but grown men basically try to break each other's limbs and choke each other and that sort of thing. But I find that to be therapeutic. And I got to tell you, there's nothing that'll keep you humble more so than getting your ass handed to you on a consistent basis. And I really do find that to be pretty therapeutic in sort of my own very warped way. And we all have what we find to be therapeutic, whether it's meditation or a walk in the park or reading a book or whatever it might be. I'm just one of those people who historically evidently likes pain, so I seek out pain wherever possible.
Okay. Some interesting facts about you.
See, exactly.
Yeah. So what is success to you personally in 3 words?
In 3 words, success to me personally would be See, I've got 4 words in mind.
Okay, 4 is good.
4 is good? Okay. Yeah. Not dying at night. So, if I don't die at night, then that means I wake up in the morning. So that to me is success. If you can wake up every morning and not die at night, then, you've done pretty well because, there's a lot that goes into keeping us alive. And, we kind of take it for granted in terms of the eating, the breathing, the shelter, I mean, everything else. And so, if you survive the night and you didn't die, that's a pretty successful day. And so, for me, success is really about just continuing to fight the good fight.
Fantastic. Are there any books that really influenced your life?
Uh, I must admit that when I was younger, I read, some of what one might call the more popular books, like the Tony Robbins books of the world, like Unlimited Power,
Mm-hmm.
and the Napoleon Hill type books. I read all that stuff when I was younger, and yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, they were really, and they're still really great books that are highly inspirational, motivational, and help keep you on path.
Mm-hmm.
Love that type of book. Not to say that I do anything with the knowledge or the information or the teachings, but it's just great to hear it. You get rah rah for a minute or two, and then you go back to life. But more recently, I had the privilege of knowing J. Conrad Levinson before he passed, and J. Conrad Levinson was the author of Guerrilla Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from a business perspective, it was one of the more influential books that has ever been written. And so, having a chance to meet Jay, it was really nice to connect that book with the actual man who wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that book is still to this day is extremely applicable to modern business. And so that book is truly something I would continue to recommend. Other books that I've enjoyed over time. More recently, something that Chris, I'm probably going to butcher his last name, but Gillaboo or Gillabo or something of that nature, Galobo. It's called The $100 Startup, and The $100 Startup is it's a great book. I love the stories of people who have transitioned into what I refer to as the laptop lifestyle. And that's really where we've kind of cut the cord, I mean, so to speak, from having to be in the same place at the same time in order to conduct business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, lots of really inspiring, interesting stories of how people made that transition from that day job or being a mommy or whatever the circumstances may have been to creating something that not only do they enjoy but it's also financially rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Do you have a formal college education, and what do you think about traditional college education?
Yeah, I do. I've got the typical bachelor's, and I've gone on to get my master's degree. So not only do I have the undergraduate education, but I got the graduate education as well. Now, that said, I am one of those people that firmly believes that college is probably the single worst investment that a parent can make.
Uh-huh.
Now, mind you, I said a parent can make because the statistics are pretty staggering. I mean, 85% of those who graduate with a 4-year degree will not work in their field of study within 5 years of graduation. So, what does that mean? It means
Mm-hmm.
basically that the return on investment that a parent is making in their child, I mean, really the only return that they're getting is that child coming back home to live with them for another 6 years until they figure their shit out. So, that's not exactly the kind of return I think most parents had in mind. And reality is that if you know what it is that you want to do, like you want to be an architect, you want to be a doctor,
Yeah.
you want to be a broadcast journalist, whatever it might be, well, then you need that piece of paper. You need that education because ultimately, if you're going to be a doctor, you got to have the PhD. No one's going to hand you no one's going to hand you the scalpel and just say, hey, perform some brain surgery, unless you spent, invested all that time and energy, money, and resources into learning the craft and understanding exactly what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
But again, that represents about 15% of those who go to school. So, I'm not against traditional education. I think it has its time. I think it has its place. But we got to stop perpetuating this educational myth that you cannot be successful without that piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So, what was the best advice you have ever received?
As I think about going back in time, I've received a lot of really good advice over the years, but you have thousands of conversations with people and millions of things are said to you over the course of your life to this
Mm-hmm.
day. And there is one conversation that I remember that I mean, literally I can see it in my mind as if it was yesterday, and it involves the best piece of advice I've ever been given. When I was contemplating opening that nightclub, so we talked about the nightclub earlier. When I was contemplating opening the nightclub, I had been DJing for a number of years, so I had a pretty good following. So I thought that, people would come to the club if I opened it. But of course, as a 19-year-old, I was concerned. I didn't know if I could pull it off. I'd never run a business before, and so there were a lot of fears. There were a lot of doubts. And I was talking to, actually, my for a little while, I was into the game of golf, and I had a golf coach, and I was talking to him about this plan, about this idea,
Yeah.
and he said, "What are you afraid of if you open the club?" And of course, I had to, think twice about that. And I said, "Well, I mean, I guess I'm afraid of losing money. I'm afraid of looking bad. I'm afraid of what people might think. I'm afraid of, not being able to recover, et cetera, et cetera." And he said, "Yeah, I mean, those are all rational fears. Those are rational possibilities."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "But remind me what you're doing now, for money. What are you doing now for money? What are you doing for work?" And I told him, I said, I'm DJing, but at the same time, I was also waiting tables, and I was pumping gas. I was doing whatever I had to do to make ends meet. And what he said was, I think you should open the club. And if things don't work out with the club, you can always go back to pumping gas.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was just one of those things, as I said, that just has really stuck with me all these years, because there is something that you can do. So if push came to shove and you ever had to really put food on the table or get some money in to pay the light bill or whatever it might be, there is something that you can do, whether it's pumping gas or waiting tables or cleaning toilets, or tutoring children, or teaching gymnastics. I mean, I don't know, whatever it is, there is something that represents pumping gas for you. And so for me, I mean, that was honestly the best piece of advice that I've ever been given,
Mm-hmm.
and primarily because it gave me the freedom to take risks and gave me the freedom to pursue opportunities that, under normal circumstances, had I not had that conversation, I may not have done.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So you just mentioned, Steve, that you had that fear and you had to overcome it. And so many people have a lot of fears, especially in business. One of
Sure.
them is fear of rejection, so they don't make that phone call or don't network. Do you have any advice as a coach how we overcome fears?
Yeah, everybody has their own thought process around fear and how to overcome it, and they've all got acronyms and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I have my own acronym for fear, and what I say is that fear is really when you forget everything about reality, right? So it's FEAR, forget everything about
Yeah.
reality, because the truth is that things are never going to go as good as you think they might, and they're never going to go as poorly as you fear, as you're
Mm-hmm.
afraid they might, right? So it's always going to be kind of somewhere in the middle. And what I firmly believe is that when you look back on your life, you will most regret failing to take action than taking action and realizing what those ignorant people out there term as failure. And we've already talked about failure, but I mean, that the only people who care or are going to make a big deal about what happens to you are those you probably don't really like anyway. So fuck
Mm-hmm.
them. I mean, really, it doesn't matter what they think anyway.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Is there anything on fear and all of that coaching in your book? What is your what?
The acronym is in there, so
Oh,
yeah. I mean,
okay.
if you pick up what is your what, which
Uh-huh.
obviously I highly encourage everybody to do. But if you pick up the book, yeah, you'll see a discussion around fear in there. But I don't spend a lot of time on it, because either you're going to live your life as as a scared little mouse in the corner, or you're going to be that lion who's going to roar and make people notice you and make people notice what you do. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the two choices. Although people say you can kind of live life in the middle, and just I'm not knocking the 9 to 5 if that's what you want to do, and you're comfortable just paying the bills and coming home to your family that loves you. Then so be it. It's not for me to say that's right. It's not for me to say that's wrong.
Hmm.
But for me, I don't believe there is a life in the middle. I think that you have to be polarizing. I think that you have to be clear about who you are and what you stand for and be authentic about it. And people are going to line up on either side of you. They're going to love you, they're going to hate you, they're going to like you, they're not. And you can't do anything about either. So, really, what's most important in my way of thinking is not what other people think by any stretch of the imagination, but just that people think about you. And
Hmm.
that's really all that matters.
Wonderful. So, what would be your last piece of advice for younger generations, for young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it really all boils down to you are the solution to someone else's problem.
Hmm.
And there are people who are literally praying for you to show up in their life right now. And reality is that if you keep that gift within and you don't share that gift in the way that was intended for you to do, there's a lot of people out there who honestly are going to be missing a very important piece of the puzzle that you ostensibly are responsible for neglecting to make that puzzle complete, right, for them because you, for whatever reason, chose not to pursue your what with strategic abandon and be the solution to other people's problems. But assuming that you do embrace that notion that you are the solution to someone else's problem and you go out and you share your what with strategic abandon, and these people who were praying for you to show up in their life find you, well, then it's time for them to stop praying and time for them to start paying because you should be paid exceptionally well for what comes most naturally to you and never apologize for who you are and how you're naturally wired to excel.
Beautiful, love it. So, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, do you take on, do you do still coaching or you only speak in public?
Yeah, I mean,
What's it?
I do it all,
Uh-huh.
and if you pay me enough money, we can work one on one. Otherwise, I've got group coaching stuff. I do live events. Internet Profits Live, which is PROPHETS, Internet Profits Live. It's a huge event that I do. That's all about internet marketing and implementation. Highly encourage people to check it out at internetprofitslive.com and join us. It's going to be an amazing event. And other than that, go to steveolsher.com,
Uh-huh.
SteveOlsher. So steveolsher.com, and that's certainly the best place to start.
And you can grab, they can grab your book on your website, right? I just saw it. You can grab your book.
Yep, you can grab a free copy of
Yeah,
What Is
free
Your What?
copy.
Yep, at
Absolutely. So
steveolsher.com, or you can go to whatisyourwhat.com/free and grab the book there as well.
amazing. So, is there anything else you would like to add that might add value?
Uh, you know, yes and no. I mean, we could talk about all of the different experiences that I've had. We could talk about the ways that I've helped people,
Hmm.
but ultimately the bottom line is, don't listen to me. Don't listen to my stories. Don't listen to the stories of others. Just create your own story, create your own book, and give something, just really give the people something to read. And I don't mean physically in terms of, you being able to hand them a book. I just mean that, you've got a story to create. And ultimately, that's how people are going to remember you. That's the legacy that you're going to leave, is whatever that story is. So you got some work to do. You got some writing to do. And that's really where it all starts, is just recognizing that it
Hmm.
doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter what you've experienced. I mean, we've all, had our own bullshit that we've had to deal with, some much worse than others. I get that. But, the truth is that life starts over right now. And it
Yes.
starts over again right now. So whether or not you choose to bring the past with you into the present moment is exactly that. It's a choice. And my suggestion is that you look at this moment and every moment that follows as a blank slate with which to create the legacy that you truly do want to leave.
Beautiful. Thank you, Steve.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm through. I'm through. I'm through. I'm through.